Audio for the CoCo Crew Podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. You have a need to host audio on the internet, whether it be your own podcast or recordings for your place of worship, your Elks Lodge, or whatever clubs you might belong to, then we recommend that you check out Cyber Ears, where you get unlimited bandwidth and get your audio on your terms.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy color computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo3 yet?
CoCo.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome. You are listening to episode 82 of the CoCo Crew Podcast, the oldest regularly scheduled CoCo show on the internet, and what I like to think of as the 800-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to CoCo shows. Let's see, we are, of course, recently celebrating that we have reached the download milestone of 275,000 downloaded episodes, copies of episodes, or whatever, downloads.
That's awesome.
And I think that's pretty amazing. A lot of shows that have been on even as longer than us don't reach that. It's a pretty cool milestone. So, of course, I'm John Linville. And I'm here with the regular hosts. So let's see, we've got Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, John.
And then we've got Mike Rowan. Hello, Mike.
Hello, everybody.
And, of course, we've got Mr. Boise Pete. Hello, Boise.
Hello, CoCo World.
All right. Let's see. Time marches on. Let's see. By the time this comes out, it'll be the end of March. CoCo Fest, well, actually, it says about a month away. It's a month, it's about, 6 weeks, something like that away. So, getting close. And the assembly is about 6 months away. Looking very good there. What's everybody working on? You doing anything cool in the CoCo world? I've been putting together electronics kits and had some PCBs made and all kinds of cool stuff like that. Nothing that you guys don't already know about, though. How about you guys? Working on anything cool?
I completed 2 more Gamesters.
Cool.
And now on my bench Gamester, I have one just for the bench. I'm trying to get your autofire circuit working in it, so that's coming along pretty cool.
Cool.
Nice. I assembled my autofire circuit, but I have to install it in my joystick next.
Yeah, very cool. It was fun to put those together. Should have bought more PCBs, though.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, what joystick did you install that in, by the way?
Oh, I'm doing it in one of the Craft, the deluxe 2-button joystick.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, that's great.
I've been thinking about projects and thinking about table displays and that kind of stuff, but mostly doing taxes and that sort of thing. Let's see. Well, how about acquisitions? Anyone bought anything cool lately?
I actually did. I got some CoCo stuff. Ian Mav was down a couple weeks ago, all the way from Australia, and he spent a week here in Niagara Falls, which is close to where I live, and we did some retro hunting at some recycle shops. We actually found a CoCo2 and a TP10 printer.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
Yeah, that was nice shape. So that was fun, and he brought me down for my birthday actually a Fred for my Model 4.
Oh, wow,
Oh,
nice.
cool.
So that's good.
I did buy something kind of special. A PAL CoCo3 all the way from Australia.
Oh, cool.
And,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, very nice. It looks good. Haven't had it operational yet. It's supposed to work. It looks good. So hopefully it'll actually work. But always nice to kind of complete the set. It's the PAL CoCo3, of course, has a different video board. So for composite video output on the PAL CoCo3s is actually a converter board that's actually hooked up to the RGB circuits. Whereas on a NTSC CoCo3, you choose between composite video color colors and RGB colors. On the PAL ones, you just always use RGB colors. I kind of wish they had done that for the NTSC ones as well. But if they had, you wouldn't be able to get the color mode on NTSC. So, I'll take the trade-off there. But still nice to have a slightly different model there. Looking forward to playing with that some. Then maybe we'll call this our introduction. Welcome to our CoCo Cruisers that are here helping us make our way to 300,000 downloads. So why don't we just take a little break, and then we'll be back with some announcements.
What is it, Mom? It's Coco, dear. The Coco gives you energy, makes you strong.
I can hardly wait. Wow, keen.
I'm glad you like it. Start the day off right with Coco.
Ask your mom to get Coco today.
Come to the Radio Shack hideout. I'm Mr. Small, and I'm tired of big computers. Give me something that's really, really small.
MC10 small. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not big. No, no, no. MC10's got just 4K bytes. Tiny metal keys in a case that's white.
Radio Shack's MC10 combined with any color television gives you a big system in a tiny package.
4K bytes, they feel right. Tiny metal keys in a case that's white.
Welcome back. Now it's time for announcements. Now our first announcement is kind of a little out of order, or a little special announcement. And it's a little sad, but we have the news this week coming from the Star Telegram. I guess it's from Fort Worth, Texas. Mr. John Roach, former CEO of Tandy, has died at the age of 83. He was a notable person, head of a big company back in the day, arguably a pioneer for computers, along the lines of almost a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates, but maybe not quite so celebrated. Still, someone who obviously had, if it weren't for him, none of us would be on this podcast, wherever else we might be.
Very true.
Here, Mr. Roach, or rest in peace.
Yep. I got to interview Mr. Roach for a book that I wrote with Bill Judas on the CoCo, and he was a gentleman. I remember our interview well. It was on the phone. You're right, John. His role at Tandy Corporation really paved the way for the CoCo and other computers, of course, and ultimately our careers, if you think about it, based on the fact that we started out on that computer. So,
no doubt. Definitely a debt to his legacy.
Yeah, I also was impressed by his folksy Texas way of telling stories. If you see some of his YouTube videos, just a real gentleman, but a true Texan, right? Really admired that about him. He was Texas through and through.
John Roach, rest in peace, dead at 83. All right, moving on. You are listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast. We are available on Twitter with a Twitter handle of @CoCo Crew Podcast. That's @CoCoCrewPodcast. If you're prone to sending tweets, feel free to send us a tweet. We may tweet back. Tweet. No one ever sent us tweets. I'm not sure if that's a good sign or a bad sign, but if you feel like sending one, feel free to send it to us, and we may actually answer back. You never know. We are also available on Facebook. We have a Facebook group called The CoCo Crew Podcast. That's 4 separate words. So if you are on Facebook and looking for extra sources of news and information for your feed, do come and join the group. You may get a little early news or special insight or information or whatever. So come and hang out with us, and we'll be happy to have you. We are a podcast, so we do have an RSS feed available at cococrew.org if you're more of a old school or DIY kind of podcast downloader. Otherwise, we are available through Apple Podcasts and also through Google Play for normal podcast downloading. And if you prefer to stream your podcasts, we're available for streaming through Spotify, through Stitcher, and on TuneIn. If you check the show notes, we have links to each of those, so feel free to come and check those out. Also, for some time, we've taken our audio-only podcast and done some processing on it, turning it into a video version that we post on YouTube. We started doing that a while back and got a lot of head shaking, head scratching. Now I noticed 2 or 3 other podcasts that are doing the same thing, so we were innovators. If nothing else, you may want to check out the YouTube version of the podcast because YouTube does a pretty good job with providing subtitles. So if you perhaps have a hearing impairment, or perhaps if English is not your first language, or if you just have trouble following Neil's weird Canadian accent, then the subtitles may help you enjoy the podcast more. Anyway, all right, so moving on. Neil's okay, don't worry, he takes it.
You say we talk too fast. I've heard that.
Let's see. So, we are a member of the Throwback Network. This, of course, is a list of retro-themed or 80s-themed podcasts. If you are all caught up on the CoCo Crew Podcast, looking for other sources of audio entertainment, we recommend that you check out the podcast listed on the Throwback Network. We're also listed on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. There's also a list of retro-themed podcasts, in this case, technology-oriented, gaming-oriented podcasts. Again, if you're caught up with the CoCo Crew Podcast and looking for other audio entertainment, then we recommend that you check out the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. If you want to reach out and contact any of the hosts of the CoCo Crew Podcast, we do have some email addresses. The first 3 will reach all of the hosts. Show, SHOW, at cococrew.org. That's at COCOCREW.org. Podcast, PODCAST, at cococrew.org. Or feedback, FEEDBACK, at cococrew.org. If you want to reach out to one of the hosts individually, then we each have individual email addresses. John, JOHN, at cococrew.org. Neil, NEIL, at cococrew.org. Mike, MIKE, at cococrew.org. And Boise is BOISY, at cococrew.org. All right, well, those are our standard announcements. Now we've got a few events located in real life that we think you might enjoy. VCF East, that is going to be held April 22nd through the 24th, 2022. That's coming right up. That's just like a month away now. It will be an in-person show. This year's themes: 1, women in computing, or 2, computers for the masses. The exhibitors, instructors, vendors pay no admission fee. So VCF East is held in Wall, New Jersey, the Info Age Science Center. Usually a good variety of old computer stuff on display. Nice group of people. If you're in the northeastern part of the United States, in the New Jersey or New York City area, then we recommend that you check out Finnish Computer Festival East, April 22nd through the 24th, 2022.
I plan on being there.
Okay, awesome. If you go, you get to meet Boise. Soon after that, April 29th through May 1st of 2022, we have the Midwest Gaming Classic. This will be held in the Wisconsin Center on Wisconsin Avenue in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Midwest Gaming Classic is a trade show featuring 150,000 plus square feet of retro and modern home video game consoles, pinball machines, arcade video games, tabletop RPGs, computers, tabletop board games, brain games, collectible card games, air hockey, and that's just the start. Sounds like a great event. I know Ron Klein always recommends this one. If you are in the northern part of the Midwest in the United States, then we recommend you check out the Midwest Gaming Classic. May 14th through 15th, 2022, we have the last Chicago CoCo Fest. This is the event sponsored by Glenside. It's traditionally been the big CoCo event. It was in Lombard, Illinois for quite some time, but now is Elk Grove Village, Illinois. Again, that's May 14th and 15th of 2022. Be there or be square. Coming up July 15th through the 17th, 2022, we have the Southern Fried Gaming Expo. This will be held in Atlanta, Georgia at the Marriott Renaissance Waverly. The Southern Fried Gaming Expo features more than 300 arcade and pinball machines, dozens of new and retro console systems, a massive tabletop library, RPGs, wrestling, music tournaments, a vendor expo. That's music, tournaments, not music tournaments. A vendor expo, exciting panel sessions, guest speakers, and so much more. Game all weekend at SFGE 2022. Sounds like a cool event. Boise and Mike have been to more than one of these.
Has nothing to do with fried chicken either.
Sadly, no. All right, so moving on. Still in July 19th through the 24th. It's the Apple II event, Kansas Fest. Kansas Fest is the world's only annual convention dedicated to the Apple II computer that revolutionized the personal computing industry. Their words, not mine. Kansas Fest invites hobbyists, retro computing enthusiasts, die-hard aficionados together from all corners of the world. I've been to this event once. It's a cool event, in-person event. They may or may not be holding it in person this year. Sounds like it's under consideration, but still not decided. July 19th through the 24th, 2022. Coming up after that, August 6th through the 7th, 2022, we have Vintage Computer Festival West. VCF West is for everyone, computer geeks, families, children, students, collectors, IT professionals, and curious onlookers. Held at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California. Tickets are now available. You'll find demos of 1960s mini computers, 1970s homebrew systems, 1980s 8-bitters, and a few oddities. Some exhibits contain pristine original machines, while others focus on unique modern hacks and everything in between. Check out the Vintage Computer Festival West. Highly recommended. Which brings us to the crown jewel of our of our real life events. If you're a CoCo person or a Tandy person at all, we recommend that you get to Springfield, Ohio between September 30th and October 2nd of 2022 for Tandy Assembly. Tandy Assembly will again be offering the Tandy Tech Track. There'll be a selection of highly technical topics presented by some of the leading figures in the Tandy Radio Shack TR80 vintage computing community. It's a cool event. Lots of nifty Tandy-oriented people. Bring your CoCos, bring your Tandys. Tandy 1000s. Neil will talk to you about those. Definitely a cool event. Come out and support us. I can't think of any better way for you to spend a weekend in the early fall. All right. Well, that does conclude our announcement section. So why don't we take another little break, and we'll be back with some news.
You love the classic Motorola 6809. Its classic lines, its DIP package, its elegant instruction set, and the 6309 improved on the classic design. You've loved cruising the ROMs together for decades. But today, something new is arriving. The next generation of microprocessors implementing the Motorola 6809 instruction set. Introducing the Turbo 9 microprocessor IP. Ready for soft-core IP, Verilog RTL, FPGAs, and custom ASICs. 3 new models that speak the same 6809 language as their predecessors, but with modern features under the hood. Instruction pipelining, advanced RISC micro-op translation, and dual 16-bit ALUs. The Turbo 9 with the classic 16-bit internal data path and 8-bit data bus with 2-cycle 16-bit transactions. The sporty Turbo 9S with a 16-bit data bus, 1-cycle aligned 16-bit transactions, and 2-cycle unaligned transactions. And the racing Turbo 9R with a 16-bit data bus and 1-cycle 16-bit transactions. The Turbo 9 models are set to tear up the memory map, beating both AVR and RISC-V implementations in Drystone benchmark tests. Search YouTube for Turbo 9 Pipelined for details. Turbo 9, the classic Motorola 6809 instruction set reimagined.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, thanks for coming back. Now it's time for news.
At the top of the set, we have one from Paul Shoemaker. Here is the 16-color CoCo3 version of my game Poker Squares. So this was a game that Paul originally wrote for the CoCo VGA, which is for the CoCo2. So it's nice to see he's got it ported over to the CoCo3. Nice, very nice card game.
Yeah, it really looks nice.
Does look good.
Great work, Paul. From Darren Ottery, he writes, "Hi everyone, I've written a simple game. It's a simple game River Raid for the MC10. It also shows a demo of it. It actually looks really nice. I used to have an Atari 2600 back in the day, and River Raid was actually one of my favorite games on that game console. And looking at this playing, it's really nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
The
other thing to mention, which is kind of neat here, reading up on this, is that so it looks like he wrote this in BASIC, but he used a tool to convert it to assembly from Greg Dion.
Oh yeah, it's the BASIC compiler.
Yeah, very cool.
It's cool to see these projects.
Yeah, that compiler's really opened up a lot of possibilities for the MC10.
Mm-hmm. From, I don't know if I got to pronounce his name right here, Mauricio?
I think it's Mauricio.
Mauricio Mate? Well, he wrote in here, I made a modest entrance to the program whose name, in its acronym, is even funny. And then he laughs, and the acronym is ASSB. And what that stands for is... Yeah, another spaceship battle. But that looks cool.
Yeah, it does look cool. Very nice. Thank you, Mauricio.
From Jim Gary. It's a new 2-player board game, similar to, but not the same as, the classic Atari ST Laser Chess. He writes here it's a recode of the classic Atari ST board game.
Looks interesting.
It does, yeah.
It does look neat.
A lot of MC10 support here in this section of the news.
Yeah, full of it this month.
Oh, very cool.
Next news item. Basic ideas of 8-bit chiptune sound effects by
Oboro Akanea.
It's a 2-minute video, YouTube video, showing the characteristics of 8-bit sound effects. Vibrato, goes through that, gives an example of that, touches on things like trill, all these different types of sound effects or characteristics of sound effects. Demonstrates it with a program, John, in Windows, it looks like?
Yeah, it looks that way. I mean, it's a bit of a primer. I'm not sure it actually teaches you anything fairly mapped out. It's kind of more like hints at what kinds of things you should be trying to do. So sometimes that's the beginning of wisdom, right? It's knowing where you're going.
It is nice that it's visual as well. So that is helpful to understand the difference if you're not familiar with these different musical terms or what it means in the chip tune
Right,
world.
that's what it is defining the terms and showing examples. Obviously, you won't learn music theory in 2 minutes, right? But
absolutely.
Very nice.
Yeah, definitely worth the watch. It's not very long.
Yeah, 2 minutes. It's kind of a nice little bit, bite-sized bit of information. The next news item is analyzing every second of the classic dial-up modem sound by Len Pesco Yang at Popular Mechanics. This is a great article. It really brought back a lot of memories of a series of, parts of the sound of a modem dialing up, something I haven't heard in a very long time, to be honest, but it's just really cool.
The amount of stuff that happened over modems is amazing, really. And, obviously the telephone system predated common persons having access to computers. It was the obvious choice to connect computers across the U.S. at least. You can't just plug in, the wires don't just connect directly. So you have to transmit data as sound. That sounds, I don't know if that sounds simple or not, but it's even more complicated than that, especially when you try to make it go fast. That devil screech that your mom would get when she'd pick up the phone trying to make a call while you were calling the modem or calling the BBS or whatever. It's not just to make you angry. That actually there's a reason for it to be making those awful sounds. And so I thought that was kind of cool that there was an analysis of it that would explain some of it.
Yeah, the devil's screech, a.k.a. Satan's scream.
Yeah, right.
Very good stuff. The next news item has a rather long title. I thought I'd compare Basic 09 and Color Basic on a Silver Veritosthenes benchmark from Byte Magazine, and it may end up as a non-comparison by Mr. James Jones, my old, and I use that term in an endearing way, my old colleague. James posts on Facebook I guess an attempted comparing Color Basic against Basic 09 with the Civa Veritasthenes benchmark from Byte Magazine, and I'm hoping and believing that he was inspired by this, given the fact that this is one of the benchmarks we used in the Turbo 9 project.
Very cool that he's doing that, and he does these comparisons between Basic 09 and Color Basic. I'm sure it's hoping to inspire people to check out Basic 09. I love that when he does it always has this very academic presentation that comes out. Yeah. Like you can take the professor out of school, but you can't take the school out of the professor, or something like that.
This is absolute 100% vintage James Jones here.
Yeah. But so he hits an issue where, because of implementations of the language, that it's not straightforward to put the same or similar code between the two basics, and talk some about the how and why of that. I'm sure there's a veiled Color Basic sucks somewhere in there, but I'll let you discover that for yourself.
Yeah, we know he's not a big fan of Color Basic. The next news item is, this is a complete basic interpreter for Arduino, including I/O and other useful functions, by SL001 at arduino.cc. Looks like a blog post with an Arduino running a basic interpreter that I'm presuming is written in the C language that Arduino supports. What it appears to be.
Arduino C, whatever.
Arduino C, right. C Lite, whatever they call it. It's basically C, but they kind of dress it up. Yeah. It's like a mixture of C and C++ in some way, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It is showing off some screenshots and some information about this basic interpreter, which is actually pretty cool when you think about it, that we are running a basic interpreter written in a C-like language on an Arduino. Very cool.
Yeah, it's a cool alternative for the Arduino.
And the Arduino could be a cool alternative to actual retro hardware if this is the kind of experience you're looking for. There's certainly plenty of Arduino hardware. You can hook it up and don't have to worry about destroying it if you get a power surge or if somebody steps on it or whatever.
And you don't need a giant memory footprint either.
Exactly. Moving on. We have a number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 79, 10. We've got 11 separate URLs here in this next little group, all from Per Surratt. So some time ago, Per and Kees van Os, I think those are the two primary people at least, did some conversion of a runtime for the AGD, that's the Arcade Game Designer. And so this basically lets games designed for AGD, which were actually targeted for, I guess, the ZX Spectrum originally, because they target AGD and not the Spectrum, then they can also, and this AGD has been kind of retargeted to, the Dragon and the CoCo. Now we have the AGD games as a source of entertainment for Dragon and CoCo users. And there's been a whole lot of them. And he continues to come through with his, he calls them packs. And each pack is usually, this looks like 4, 5, 6, so 5 or 6, give or take, per pack. So he's announcing, so he did this every Friday for a couple of months, it looks like. I'm sure we had a similar set of links in previous episodes, but in this episode, we're talking about packs 49, 50, 51, 52, and 53. And then, of course, he also has what he calls the big pack, which covers 297 games. And that's not quite enough. So he's, I guess he's done a version of his retargeted runtime that hits the Super Sprite FM board, which is the game or the hardware out of the UK that includes Yamaha graphics and sound hardware. I don't know if it's some of the same games or if it's a totally different set of games. There's probably some overlap in time, would be my guess. So we've got a few links there dedicated to where he's done similar packages for the Super Sprite FM. Then he has a couple more links related to the specific game Mare 2. I guess there was a bug in the control menu for Mare 2 where the joystick didn't work at all. Mare 2 has an effect never used on AGD games. So if you're really looking for something special, then you want to check out this Mare game. Anyway, lots of cool stuff coming out of the AGD community, thanks to some work done by Pear and Case. Covers not only normal Dragons and CoCos, but also the ones running the Super Sprite FM hardware. If you're looking for games to play, there's a whole lot of them right here in this little news item. And so definitely some way to waste some time, I'm sure some would say, or entertain yourself with your CoCo, with or without this Super Sprite hardware. Very cool stuff. So again, thank you, Pear. We've said many times, it's great work. I think we leave off Case too much, but thank you, Case Van Os, as well, of course.
Since 1994, Cloud9 has made cool stuff for your color computer. Now Cloud9 is proud to announce the 2 Megabyte Triad Plus memory expansion board. The Triad Plus works in two ways. Purchase just the Triad Plus board to expand your Color Computer 3 from 128K to 512K of RAM. Or add the new Protector Plus MMU to access the full 2 megabytes of static RAM aboard the Triad Plus. And the Protector Plus MMU utilizes full buffering to protect your CPU. Unlike previous 2 megabyte memory expansions for the CoCo3, the Triad Plus operates seamlessly without the need for special patches, configuration, or workarounds. Games like Donkey Kong Remix and Sierra Adventure games simply work without hassle. And the Triad Plus will reduce your CoCo's power consumption and heat generation. The Triad Plus and Protector Plus MMU, only from the innovative engineering of Cloud9. Cool stuff for your color computer. Visit cloud9tech.com for details.
Oh, I'm dead. But check out that high score.
How did you do that?
With the Gamester. It's a real arcade joystick with arcade buttons.
Can I try?
Sure.
Wow, this has really got some weight to it.
Yeah, it's made of real wood.
Is this walnut?
Yep. You can choose any wood or finish when you order yours.
It looks great, and this joystick is amazing.
It's smooth, and the buttons are great. You can choose a custom cable length, or even get a left-handed version.
I'm sold. Where do I get mine?
Introducing the Gamester. The Gamester is the ultimate 2-button joystick controller for your color computer, Dragon, and Tandy 1000. The Gamester features a genuine arcade-quality joystick with 2 large arcade-quality cherry switch buttons on a single surface. Every Gamester is built to order. Choose the wood for your cabinet. Choose custom paint or stain and finishes. The Gamester is designed to last a lifetime. To build yours, simply reach out to Neil Blanchard by email. Neil@CoCoCrew.org. That's NEIL@CoCoCrew.org. Experience genuine arcade controller action for all of your favorite color computer, Dragon, and Tandy 1000 computer games. For true arcade action, it's the Gamester.
Next item is from Paul Shoemaker. Here's a mock-up of a freestyle game for the CoCo3 that I think will be my next project. And now shuffle and deal a deck of cards in assembly language. Also working on this in 2022. Watch the CoCo3 have all the fun, so I think that's a CoCo 1 or 2 version from the looks of the graphics. So, Paul's working on some versions of freestyle for the CoCo3 and for the CoCo 1 and 2. Very cool stuff.
Nice, very nice animation of the card dealing.
Yeah.
Lots of cool stuff. Paul's become the expert of card games on the CoCo.
Yeah, he certainly has.
If you're thinking of doing Texas Hold'em or Pinochle or, whatever, you may want to talk to Paul, see how he can help you out.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's very good work and nice to have some extra games. And like I said, not every game needs to be a badass space shooter or whatever. So very nice.
Very good work.
All right. Let's see. Moving on. We got one from Robert C. Again, a little MC10 thing. This Sonic decides to visit the MC10. So basically, he's got a little video that shows some animation of Sonic the Hedgehog. Looks like he's got about 20 some odd frames of animation. Shows Sonic running. I don't know if that's going to become something bigger or not, but still cool. It's always nice to see people playing with the technology, and whether they use it directly or if that just is educational for whatever they do in the future. Still kind of cool to see. So, yeah, thanks for sharing, cool. Robert. All right, and moving a little outside the zone here, but here's one I thought might be interesting to some people. This is an article from IEEE Spectrum, pretty serious industry computing magazine. Articles by Paul Wallach. Don't know anything about Mr. Wallach, but the article is The Invention of Battlezone and How the U.S. Army Hijacked the Video Game. Many of us will be familiar with Battlezone. It was a mostly black and white vector game from Atari back in the day. The monitor actually is black and white, but they put gel overlays on parts of the monitor so that, for example, the score section looked red, and I guess most of the other had a green, so instead of just white mountains, you had like green mountains. Anyway, pretty lengthy article. I'm talking about the basics of Battlezone. There's always been this story about how the Army was so impressed with Battlezone and watching, probably from watching young soldiers and recruits down at the recruiting station lining up to play Battlezone. They thought, hey, this might be a way to train some people how to shoot guns on actual tanks. And so they did reported to have done a tank, an Army trainer version of Battlezone. I think a few years ago, somebody actually laid hands on one or two of those somewhere. Not sure where they are. Probably not in New Mexico landfill, but that's a different story. Anyway, you might enjoy the story of the technology of the invention of Battlezone. So check it out. Hope you enjoy it. If not, well, send me some feedback. Tell me not to put these stories in here.
All right. If you're a fan of Wordle, you're going to love this block. We got a lot of Wordle activity in the CoCo community lately. This first one's from Rick Adams. Wordle written in a basic language program on the Tandy Color Computer 3. He just fixed some bugs in the version that he's got. So I think we've covered that one before, but he's continuing to develop it. So check that one out. Also, we have from L. Curtis Boyle, this is the Nitrous 9 ease of use version of Wordle. It's a clone of Rick's clone of Wordle in BASIC. Said he forgot to save a change, had the word by twice. So there's an updated version of Curtis's for OS 9. So check that out. And then we also have a version of Wordle for the MC10, also based on Rick Adams. This is from Mr. Jim Gary. Now you can run Wordle on every one of the CoCos. I'm not sure if they've made a Dragon port, but that should be next.
Yeah,
no doubt.
It might even run on the Dragon as is. I don't know if that's been tested, so maybe a Dragon listener can tell us. Then we have one from Jim Lawless. This is, the document was made in the style of a creative computing article, Wordle in BASIC. So what he's done is he's published the basic source code for Wordle and put it into a format, I think based on, I think it was for the BBC Micro, but in Creative Computing magazine. So if you want to go back, rewind and type in, get an old listing that you would type in from a magazine, he's formatted it to look just like that. So you could print it out and type it in the old-fashioned way. And then finally, we have a link called Following the Herd, or Following the Hurdle, from Darren Atkinson. And he's got a version that will run on the MCX 32, I think. Yeah, MCX 32 SD. That's the SD card module that you can get for the MC10. So because it's got an SD card, he's got a dictionary, of almost 13,000 five-letter words. So this is probably the version that's going to keep you playing for a long time.
Right.
Definitely no once-a-day limit.
I also like his comment here that he said he wanted to come up with some clever name for the game, but he had a hard time with the combination MC10 and Wordle. So he just calls it the Wordle clone for the MC10. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So normally these groupings are 4 in each one, but because it's all Wordle, I went ahead and put in an extra link on in this group because sort of to emphasize the zeitgeist or whatever that Wordle is in the air.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're a Wordle fan, you're in the right community.
All right. The next news item is new $600 limit on 1099K walkthrough. Venmo, Cash App, Etsy, PayPal, eBay by AGC Solutions at YouTube. This is a 10-minute video. I didn't watch it all, but based on the title, I know what it's about. It's the, I believe it has to do with a new law that says that you have to have a 1099 for anyone that you send over $600 to, John. Is that right?
Yeah. I think in the video it asserts that the law hasn't really changed in terms of what you owe taxes on, but the law forces these vendors, Venmo and Cash App or whatever, to send you a 1099 for these larger transactions. This is not a tax podcast, of course, but many of us have heard at different times, you're watching a crime show or something and say, oh, we got to get this deposit or this transaction to the bank to be less than $10,000 or else they report it to the IRS. It's kind of like that, except instead of $10,000 through your bank, it's $600 through your PayPal. Now they're going to send you a 1099. If you do your own taxes, you hopefully know what a 1099 is, and hopefully you know where to put it in your tax software or whatever. Ideally, it shouldn't change how much tax you owe. It does change maybe how much paperwork you have to do. I've heard a lot of people complain about this for obvious reasons, but I saw the video come through. I thought, well, it might be of interest to, especially people doing a certain amount of business, whether that business is actual feed your face kind of business or clean up your garage kind of business. But if you're doing a lot of business on eBay or something like that, this will probably hit you in the coming year. So you might want to be aware of it.
Yeah, it is what it is. All right. The next news item is I Used to Hate Cathode Ray Tubes by Matt Evans. I like the I Used to Hate. It's pretty good. This is an article on a small ode to the CRT. And it's a good set of pictures and text intermingled together to show, I guess, the inner workings of a CRT. I have to say the picture almost reminds me of the Wall-E character from the animated Pixar movie.
Yeah, it's because it's a CRT, obviously, that puts it in our range of interest of our viewers or listeners. So, yeah check it out. I hope you like it. If you don't like it, send me an email.
That's something you're seeing less and less of, right, these days, except if you're in retro computing, is the CRT.
Well, definitely.
The next news item is my listing is an exact transcription of Appendix E as found in the book by Mr. David Weens. This is David is the I believe he's the creator of the Sardis disc controller for the CoCo back in the day. Very powerful and quite nice no-halt controller.
Oh, yes.
He's talking here about VTL09, a very tiny language for the 6809, a minimal basic inspired language. Has links to the source code in 6809 assembly. Pretty good.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting looking language. I think it was originally written for the 6800. So there's been ports to the 6502, and then there's this port for the 6809. It was published in MC 6809 Cookbook. I'm not sure what exactly inspired him to scan that in, but he did. And looks like he's having whatever he's gotten. Sometimes the assemblers, the syntax of a given assembler is just a little bit different. And so that's hitting him between the assembler that was written for the book version and versus whatever he's using. And so he hasn't been able to get it to assemble to an actual binary that he could experiment with yet. So it's kind of inviting collaboration. But kind of cool. I've stumbled across the VTL stuff myself and thought about doing a similar project. So if you hook up with David and do a project, be sure to keep me in the loop. Or at least let me know when you finish. I'd love to hear about what you do. I always think it'd be cool to do some of these older languages and see if we could get some people to get excited about programming in some of these different languages. I don't know how far that'll actually go, but love to see it happen.
The next news item is Gorilla.bass, How to Play the Secret MS-DOS Game from Your Childhood by Tom Halwerda. I'll admit, when I first saw this, I thought about the Gorilla Banana Printer, and I thought that's what this was going to be about. But that goes to show you that was my childhood. By the time this came out in 1991, I was no longer a child. So,
yeah, I'm gonna bet that Neil knows what Gorilla.bass is. Do you, Neil? Yeah, I remember that one being something that would pop up from time to time when I was still kind of in the DOS world. I don't think I ever actually played it. I may have run it and wondered how to play it. Apparently, I'm not the only one who didn't know how to play it, or else there wouldn't be an article teaching you how to play 30 years later. But if you're in that category and you have a DOS machine laying around with the Gorilla.bass on it, here's your article. You can try to figure that out. Not exactly CoCo, unless somebody wants to, like a Jim Gary or somebody like that wants to port Gorilla.bass over to the CoCo or the MC10. That might be a cool project. What do you think?
Definitely.
Yeah, well, they're doing Wordle, so why not this?
Exactly. The next link is from Roger Taylor. It says, explore the 1987 Gimme Die images in ultra detail. So as we've covered in previous episodes, Roger has a project where he's taken both 86 and 87 Gimmes and has had them decapped and has had high-resolution photographs taken of the inside. Supposed to be working on analyzing some of that. Here he's making some pictures available. So if you want to take a look, if you want to try to play the part of aerial observer, try to figure out where the enemy tank emplacements are, or where the transistors are, whatever it is you're doing, then here's Roger's offering you a chance to get in on the action. So very cool. Check it out and see what you can come up with. Thanks, Roger.
In the great hall of the CoCo League, there are assembled the world's 4 greatest heroes, created from the cosmic legends of the Tandyverse. Vapor Man, promising hardware and software that never appeared. Long-winded Man, his powers of speech enable him to take 4 hours just to tell the time. Spec Woman, able to quote specifications down to the atomic level. MPI Man, able to discern an upgraded PAL from 500 yards. Their intention, to right that which is wrong and to serve all of CoCo kind.
It's starting to rain. I'm going to roll the windows up on the car.
Okay, sweetheart.
You've worked hard for your color computer. It took years to assemble all of the pieces. You're thinking about the next step for your system, and you're happy that the rain gives you a chance to spend time with your computer.
Oh my God! What?
Life is unpredictable. That's why CoCo Mutual wants you to think about term system insurance. Taking care of future expenses if anything should happen to your vintage computer system. It's easy. We get to know your lifestyle and your needs. Then we give you our best quote and our competitors. You could receive up to $2,000 of coverage for just $15 a month. We offer plans with no medical exam required. Call CoCo Mutual at 888-6809 or visit cocomutual.com for your free quote. It's not just your computer, it's your life.
Computing is a lot of fun. However, you must know the rules of computing and obey them, or you will find it a very dangerous sport. A computer safety manual may be obtained from your local safety council, police department, Radio Shack Computer Center, or Radio Shack store. If you suspect a malfunction with your computer under conditions such as the unit has been dropped, thrown, or stepped on, the power cord is damaged, frayed, or glowing, the unit is exposed to rain, water, or mountain dew, do not attempt any further adjustment, as doing so may further damage your computer. Remember, there are no serviceable parts inside the unit. Back away slowly, move diagonally if possible, and avoid all direct eye contact with the unit. When you have reached a safe distance, contact a professional Radio Shack service technician. They will provide further instructions and may recommend protective clothing, containing the unit with inert materials such as sand or vermiculite, creating an expedient shelter. For your own protection, be sure to follow all instructions provided in your computer's manual or by Radio Shack service technicians. Computing can be a pleasurable experience as long as you always remain alert. Don't be a clown or show off while computing. You are just inviting injury or death.
From Guillaume Major. Guillaume, of course, is the maintainer of the colorcomputerarchive.com. On the Color Computer Archive, they maintain a image of kind of collated information, basically for CoCo STC users, so that if you have a CoCo STC, you can kind of get an image down and copy it to your CoCo STC and mount it up on your SD card and start playing CoCo games. And so he's in advertising here. There's a new update as of February 11th. So thanks, Guillaume, for all the work you do, keeping stuff up. That's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
If you're at CoCo STC, especially if you're using the previous versions of this CoCo STC image, or if you don't have any software that's running on your CoCo STC, you may want to grab this 5th update and see if you can enhance your CoCo activity with it. So this next link comes from Fabrizio Ferri Benedetti. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly or incorrectly, probably not correctly, but hopefully close enough. I don't mean to be insulting. So Fabrizio writes, it's my ritual. Every time I enter a secondhand bookshop, I go straight to the sciences section and search for old computer manuals. So he's got kind of a blog post here talking about different technical manuals and stuff that he's found and what he's found in them and how much he enjoys or why he enjoys reading some of these manuals. So I thought this might have some appeal to the type of people who might listen to this podcast, and I suspect there's a lot of us who like to check out old technical manuals. I got one more link here. This is from Timothy S. Brannon. It says The Other Old School Gaming is the name of his blog post, but you can tell pretty quickly by looking at it that the blog post is about him acquiring a CoCo 2. Looks like maybe by the end he's gutted it and replaced it with a Raspberry Pi. Personally, that doesn't appeal that much to me, but I know it does some. So, if that's you, hopefully that part will make up for my own lack of enthusiasm. Anyway, still cool to see the case get cleaned. And hopefully the guts didn't end up in a trash can. Anyway, it's good to see somebody taking interest in the CoCo stuff and, publish their work, their results. Very cool.
We have one from Kelkwatch at nesdev.com. This is a really cool project called NES64. So what it is, it's the Commodore 64 kernel and basic ROMs ported to work on a Nintendo Entertainment System. So that old 8-bit game console. That's really cool to see this running.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So we've had the other project where they had the Commodore stuff ported to the Atari. Then we had this stuff where they had what was the BBC Micro stuff ported to something else, whatever. And it's another one of those same projects. It makes me jealous that there aren't more 6809 computers, general purpose computers from back in the day. We might could have something like that. It's a similar project here. Porting the Vectrix ROMs over to the CoCo is not going to buy you much. Although I'd love to eat my word on that one if you could figure out how to make it do something. Anyway, just it's entertaining to me. So.
Yeah, I've always thought that'd be a cool project with the Vectrix.
Yeah, well, you might can make it happen, but you'd have to somehow figure out how to emulate the vector monitor.
Right. Yeah, you'd almost need use an oscilloscope or something as the output. Yeah, very cool. It's neat to see this this project here. And there's a couple of videos you have some linked here for in the show notes. You can see it running, and then there's one where it's playing a C scale with the NES APU. So that's cool. You can check that out. All right, next news article is from Glenn Fleischman. What is the oldest computer program still in use? Pentagon. In 1958. Program, it's called, it's pronounced MOCAS, and it's still being used. Written in COBOL here. And, yeah, it says 57 years later, and it's still going.
Very cool. Well, of course it would be the Pentagon, and of course it would be in COBOL. But still kind of cool to think, well, maybe scary also to think that this stuff running from before we were ever born. But if you get it right the first time, you don't need to keep changing it, right?
Well, that's true. And if you don't need to update it for any purpose, then, yeah, that's cool. All right, next news article here. It's from Signals Music Studio. It's a YouTube video on their channel. How to arrange chords in beautiful 4-part harmonies. Music theory, voice leading.
You don't have to be professionally licensed to make stuff that sounds nice. It's sort of the reason why I throw in all these music theory videos. And if it helps you get past finding your poetic license or whatever the music equivalent is, then go ahead and try the music, see if you can make something sound nice. But anyway, that's why I throw in the music theory videos.
Yeah, it's good for game development too.
Absolutely.
All right, next news article is from Rob Smith, Dev. It's a YouTube video, so he's got Rob Smith has a YouTube channel here. This is a really cool video, probably up a lot of our alleys here. How data is encoded and stored on floppy disks. This is part 1. It looks like he's going to release a second video, which will be about physical copy protection methods.
That's a cool video.
Yeah. And all different technologies here too. MFM, the encoding. Mm-hmm. That's really neat to see.
Yeah, it's nice how he visualizes it.
Yeah, it's a cool video, and it's one of those pertinent to the hobby. Whether or not you actually use it yourself, well, that's up to you.
All right, our next one is from Alan Huffman. It's my 1987 CoCo ASCII to Atari ATASCII converter. So this is another article from Alan that goes a little more in depth into some of the things that you would run into back in the BBS days, where the CoCo just basically has an ASCII character set, and Atari and PET and others extended that or embedded graphic characters in their table, kind of supplementing ASCII. I think a lot of people had a superset of ASCII, just like the CoCo does as well, with graphics characters. I believe ASCII only defines things out to 127 out of 256, and you could pretty much fill in what you wanted after that. So, but what Alan's talking about in this article is the fact that, well, if you wanted a CoCo to talk to an Atari, and you got into this realm of different character sets, in this case, he's looking at the Atari, talks about writing conversion code to get everybody to, talk and communicate nicely with each other. So it's an interesting article. Alan always has interesting topics to talk about.
Yeah,
he does.
I don't know how much of this kind of stuff is happening these days, but I know with all the internet modems and stuff, there's bound to be some of this kind of stuff. So maybe it applies to you. And if nothing else, if it does happen, you at least have some idea why the stuff looks funny.
So thanks for that, Alan. Our next one is from Richard Kelly. It is Memory Mirror version 0.9, a look into the innards of your computer's memory. This is cool. This is just kind of a simple tool to look at any memory address on your computer. It'll actually let you kind of navigate it with arrow keys and things, so you can you can step through memory if you want, or jump around in it and change what's in memory. That's kind of a neat introduction if you haven't done anything like that with a CoCo before. Check out this article.
It's always cool to see Richard keeps dropping his business software, and interesting. Quite often they're games, or sometimes they're utilities like this. It's just kind of cool to see people keep plugging along and doing things.
Yep, very cool. All right, we have one from Mr. Jim Gary. I've recompiled a bunch of my programs converted to be compiled using Greg Dion's MC Basic compiler. And as we were talking about earlier, I think this is catching fire in the MC10 world. Greg's come up with a great tool, and Jim has been busy converting a lot of his code to machine language using MC Basic. So I think he's provided some links where you can grab that. I think eventually it'll probably make it out to the Color Computer Archive, but you can get it right now following this link. So that's great work. I'm sure that speeds up a lot of these games.
Yeah, seems like that Greg's done put a lot of effort into making sure that his compiler consumes essentially unmodified MC10 Basic, and then compiles them, handles it that way. I started down a similar project some time ago. Kind of got a little, well, discouraged is the right word, but it kind of felt like that consuming the unmodified code wasn't going to lead to the best compiled code implementation, which was a little discouraging for me. And maybe it's just me, or maybe there's something fundamental about the process. But I kind of was looking at maybe having a compiler that would do it, the right way, or do things my way. But then it was probably going to have a certain amount of, you'd have to change certain things in your source code. And I figured people would balk at that. And maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. Maybe I'll go back to it someday. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll go more like what Greg's done, and we'll go head to head on that. Who knows? But anyway, in the meantime, Greg's is the best compiler in town for that. So it's great that he's put that out there, and Jim's making some use of it. So far, I think it's mostly been existing programs that Jim has converted. I don't know, maybe there's some that he's done brand new, totally as compiled programs. I'm not sure what the balance is on that, but hopefully we'll see more and more of that. That'd be cool.
Yep, very cool. All right, and our final links for this month come from current president of the Glenside Color Computer Club, Mr. Jim Brain. First one is nonprofit 501c3 status is official. I think Glenside's Color Computer Club was always envisioned as being a 501c3 organization, but they never actually filed the paperwork to officially do that. So,
and didn't file for the 30 years.
Yeah, for 30 years. So, and then another announcement from the Glenside Color Computer Club is that they're announcing that the fall 2021 newsletter has been released. So I guess they've fallen behind on the newsletter. Apparently the editor stepped down, and they are currently looking for an editor. So if you're interested, reach out to the Glenside Color Computer Club for more information if you want to get involved with that.
All right. Well, that is the end of our news segment. So why don't we take a little break here, and we'll be back with, a feedback segment.
Cognitech presents an evening of operetta.
For all your word processing needs is
Telewriter 64. Formatting text becomes a breeze with Telewriter 64. 51 by 24 display. It runs in as little as 16K. Available on disc or tape. It's Telewriter 64.
Telewriter 64, the color computer word processor, available only from Cognitech, Del Mar, California.
Fred.
Yeah?
Remember when I wanted to run the business on our color computer?
Yeah.
And you said it was too hard to move back and forth through all those different programs.
Yeah.
And you said all the software would cost $1,000.
Yeah.
Well, you want to hear something?
No.
VIP Library integrates all the applications we need, and guess who sells it?
Tiny Tim.
No, SD Enterprises.
Swell.
All 6 VIP applications are combined onto one disk. VIP Database, VIP Writer, VIP Spell, VIP Calc, Terminal, and Disk Zap. So we can do mail merge, finances, correspondence, all with VIP Library.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it's not $1,000. It's just $169.95.
Wonderful.
Finally, we'll have time to go see a movie.
No. VIP Library, the only integrated application suite your CoCo will ever need.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back to our, I think, possibly much anticipated feedback segment for this month. Hopefully this won't get too heavy, but we're going to try to go through it. And I know that some people are expecting us to dodge and weave. I don't think we're going to do that, but, you be the judge. And if you don't like what we say, or if you do like what we say, of course, you can be on the next month if you just send email to feedback@cococrew.org. All right, well, let's start with the first item this month. This is from T.L. Steggy, or Terry Steggy. He says, just want to say thanks for featuring my GoTech video. So that's, of course, a reference to a news item from last month. And, of course, we're happy to feature any kind of news item that's pertinent to the CoCo and you provided. And so we talked about it.
Yeah, thanks for making the video.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for making the video. It's good to cover, and especially something that I think is not that common. Most people aren't using GoTechs in the CoCo world, which I think is a little unusual. I think they're getting quite a bit of use in other parts of the vintage computing hobby. But I think it's good that people covered how to use them with your CoCo. So, again, thanks for making the video. All right, let's see. Moving on. Here's one from Tim Lindner, and this is bound to be in a reference to text segment about errors in schematics. He says, you state that the address decoding was incorrectly described by the schematic, talking about the schematic for a specific piece of hardware. I found the schematic on the Color Computer Archive. If you need more information, feel free to reference the text segment in episode 81. Anyway, he says, as an emulator author, this is indeed a source of concern. Well, it definitely should be, Tim, and be nice if we all could have all the hardware in place when we're going to write software, that especially emulation software or whatever. I know that you don't have all the hardware. Nobody does. If you ever do go to emulate a particular piece of CoCo hardware, you may want to try to find the actual hardware because that schematic is, well, I could be wrong, but it looked a little messed up to me. So it'd be nice to be able to verify it against an actual piece of hardware.
It just goes to show you that people were careful about copiers even back in the day.
And I suspect that's part of it. But then here, our next item is from Mark Marlette, commenting on the same text segment. He's essentially asserting that the process was a little more manual, more difficult to keep straight back in the day. So maybe those errors weren't all intentional. Could be they were honest errors. Hard to say. And he says, today, free schematic capture and layout tools can make one forget how difficult it was to produce a product back in the day. So no doubt about that, Mark. Like you said, I think he even intimated that for the Tony DiStefano in particular, I think you were saying that he had a tool change partway through his kind of CoCo career, shall we say. So some of his stuff, if it was produced earlier but the schematics came later, that might be a source of the errors right there. So anyway, like I said, the whole point of the segment, if you're looking at schematics, That's a bit of a caveat emptor, buyer beware. So I think the point's been made. All right, so moving on. Here comes back to some of the more contentious stuff. The next item actually comes from Eric Canales. This is the less contentious part. He just says, I absolutely loved your discussion on the Glenside Color Computer Club. And so where we asked the question of what is the value of Glenside membership now that CoCo Fest entrance is free for everyone. So I was actually a little surprised to hear from Eric, but I was glad that he enjoyed the discussion. And but he quickly ran into a bit of a wall because the next point comes from Jim Brain, who's obviously the president of Glenside Color Computer Club. And he says, I found the host discussion this month very disappointing. So he went on to suggest that we were factually incorrect in our many assertions and demonstrated a lack of understanding of the club finances, et cetera, et cetera. If you need more information, I can point you to some other sources, but suffice to say, he was not pleased with the commentary on the Glenside Color Computer Club. And as I commented back to Jim in some of the public responses in email, which is normally not my policy or any of our policy to respond back in email basically at all, because it leads to more confusion and sometimes more negativity. The topic, the discussion topic last month, we didn't decide on the topic in advance. None of us researched it. None of us felt the need to research it because it's mostly just, well, what do you think about they made the CoCo Fest attendance free, and do you think that's a good idea? And we discussed some things, and we touched on some Glenside financing or whatever. There's several of us that have been involved with Glenside for a number of years and for a number of CoCo Fests. I still think we have a pretty good handle on financing, at least in the past, and maybe there's something has changed in the past year and a half. Certainly the 501c3 issues may be a little different. It's not clear to me how that puts us so far out of line or whatever. Don't really want to rehash it now. Like I said, we weren't trying to pick any fights. It was a off-the-cuff discussion amongst some old guys who wanted to talk about CoCo color computer stuff in the Glenside Club. That's basically it. I can't really put much beyond that. And so I've sort of responded to that effect on the multimedia mailing list, and then basically said I would respond. The next response would be here on the podcast. In response to that, we get something from Jeff Tunison. He says, I don't think there's anything impromptu about a monthly podcast. Well, Jeff, you're wrong.
Right, he is wrong.
We did not, we haven't discussed our host discussion for this month yet, or we barely discussed it before we started the recording. We still haven't really decided it. We certainly have done no research or whatever beyond what's in our own brains. The fact that it's published on a monthly basis doesn't mean we plan it on a monthly basis. So I don't know. I'm not sure what other insight you have into our podcast, Jeff, but it's just not that way. Sorry you feel that way, but
for us, part of the fun is that we haven't discussed it.
Exactly.
We record it while we're
right.
discussing it. So that portion of it is definitely impromptu.
We do not rehearse our host discussions.
We never know what the other person's going to say until we have the conversation that you're hearing. So
absolutely. And it is edited mostly for time, I think, and for, potty talk. If any of that sneaks in, and coughs and, strange noises from wherever. But, that doesn't mean that it's all turned into a pre-planned, well thought out attack on, whoever. It's really it's all just silly.
We're really pretty lazy is what it comes down to. So we want all the upfront work of scripting it every month.
Yeah.
No, definitely not scripted. All right. Now we have one more from Jim Brain. So, like I said, on the multimedia mailing list, I said, well, it was an off-the-cuff or impromptu, I think is just what I said, impromptu discussion amongst some old guys. And that's all there really was to it. And then I thought it was funny. I saw a meme that was, oh, look, I found a meme that shouldn't offend anyone. And then it was just a white square. And I thought that was funny, so I posted it to the CoCo Crew Facebook group, which apparently not everyone thought it was funny. and so it kind of rekindled some of the discussion, but this time the edge to the discussion wasn't so much about what was said about Glenside or what we knew or should have known or should have said about their finances or whatever. It kind of turned more to essentially, I don't know, I felt like it's a bit of an insinuation that sending feedback to us is sending stuff down a black hole, or that at the very least that our feedback process was somehow opaque. Raised some questions to me that maybe eventually we'll have as host discussions or whatever about what sort of expectations people should have when they send feedback, or how we should respond to feedback or abstain from responding to feedback in certain ways. And we may have some of those discussions in general, but anyway, I don't think I got to Jim's quote yet. So his quote was, I'm genuinely curious how to send critical feedback in a way that is relevant but not overly showy. Honestly, Jim, I think the way you sent feedback was fine. You sent email, you responded. You responded in email, not just directly to us, but also to our show announcement, which is fine. And then you also did similar responses on some of our Facebook posts about the show announcement. And that's all fine. All those things have feedback capabilities. We do monitor the things we post, and I'll get the feedback and we collect it. And that's all fine. The thing that you need to realize, of course, is it is a monthly show. So the next opportunity to respond is this one. It's a monthly response. Sure, that is a little slow. And like I said, sometimes we'll respond via email, but we generally try not to because it's really easy to get into a tit for tat when the email responses are flying, especially when they're flying fast. And so I'm not sure that leads to a very productive conversation. That tends to lead to anger and hurt feelings, none of which we wanted or wanted to give or have. So I'm not sure I have any better answer. I think when you posted that quote that you said something about perhaps when we get together next, or meaning I guess at CoCo Fest, and we'll be happy to discuss it there. But in general, like I said, you send the email, and then you wait for the response, and maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't. I kind of felt like there was an insinuation that we somehow don't take the negative stuff or don't respond to it, or only somehow respond negatively to it. I honestly don't think that's true. Maybe it's possible. It doesn't mean we respond in a way that you necessarily like, especially if you say something and we disagree. We evaluate it best what we can. Maybe we agree, maybe we don't. Maybe we make a change. Maybe we announce that we're making a change, or maybe we don't announce it. And all we can do is just keep making the show. You can keep listening. I hope you do. You might stop listening. There's people who say they've stopped listening. It's funny, they seem to be the ones who respond a lot, even though they say they stopped. But, maybe there's some that have. Either way, it's obviously not everyone loves our show, even though a whole lot of people obviously do. But I don't know, kind of vamping here, kind of dancing. Not sure what else to say.
I think you're right. I think we've always tried to be fair. I think we have. I don't think we've shied away from presenting feedback from people that disagree with us or had a different point of view. I guess if I had any recommendation for feedback, maybe even especially if you disagree with us, is it's one thing to just say, well, I disagree and you're wrong, but it would be more helpful if you actually said, well, why, or what did we get wrong? Don't just say you're wrong. Tell us, outline, try to outline, well, this is why you're wrong. Because our minds can be changed as well. So, but we do, like John said, we see all the feedback, and we appreciate the feedback, whether it's positive or negative. I mean, it's part of the content of our monthly show. So, unless it's some really extreme, profanity laden thing, it's probably going to get to be on the show.
All right. Well, so Jim, congratulations. You're the first person who's made feedback twice in one episode. So if nothing else, there's that. I'm calling an audible here. This wasn't in our agenda, but I'm going to have one more feedback item. This was posted actually in response to our announcement that we have crossed our 275,000 download milestone. The feedback item here is from Paulo Garcia. Paulo's quote is, "It's always a blast to listen to each episode." So good to end on a positive note. Great to hear from you, Paulo, and glad you're enjoying the show. I think that's it for our feedback for this month. Certainly more than we usually have, so that's good. So now we'll take another little break, and we'll be back with a host discussion.
Make your Tandy color computer more versatile with great additions from Radio Shack. The Tandy multi-pack interface is just $99.95 and allows you to connect up to 4 program pack cartridges. Easily change between the 4 slots using the front panel switch or switch slots under software control. How about adding an 80-column adapter? Just plug in the WordPack RS cartridge to your color computer and attach a monochrome monitor. It generates crisp, clear 80-column text with true upper and lower case characters. And it's just $99.95. Find these and other great color computer products only at Radio Shack, a Tandy company.
For years, air fresheners have been used to hide unpleasant odors. But until now, your choices have always been wildflowers, potpourri, country spices, citrus, and other floral derivatives. That's all about to change with new Retrofresh from Jackson & Jackson. Retrofresh is a walk down memory lane. Each fragrant mist smells like your favorite retro computers. Salmon patties for dinner? Now it's the scent of printer ribbons, Apple IIs, and TRS-80s. Too many cats in the house? Now it's just the scent of heating power supplies, newly opened diskettes, and warm CRTs. Uncle Bob use your bathroom after the chili cook-off? Replace that offensive odor with the aroma of new computers. New Retrofresh comes in 3 scents. Apple II and TRS-80s, warm power supply and CRTs, and new computer. It's like a VCF in a can. New Retrofresh. Free yourself from the floral prison of other air fresheners.
Jackson & Jackson is an air freshener company.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back to, I think, our favorite part of the show, the host discussion. So we picked a topic. We'd suggest a number of topics. Some of them are rollovers from previous months. Some of them are brand new each month. None of them they've only been briefly discussed maybe at this point. None of them have been researched. No one is pushing any agenda here or anything like that. I guess us saying it doesn't make it any more true. You just have to believe. But this is an impromptu discussion amongst a bunch of old guys who like the CoCo. And we're just going to give you what we think. And so, what's the topic today? We hear a lot about CoCo stuff in general, or CoCo3s in particular, being expensive, especially on eBay, but basically anywhere these days. And I saw someone raise the topic. I think it was about the CoCo3. It might have been about something else. What they were saying was, the item in question, I think it was a CoCo3. Is the CoCo3 actually rare, or is it just in high demand? And so that difference is a little bit subtle, maybe. But the point being is, are there really only a handful of CoCo3s out there, or maybe a big handful, but still, a limited supply? Or is it just that there's so many people that want a CoCo3 these days that the supply just doesn't meet the demand? And is that why the prices are so high these days? I don't know. I have some thoughts. Maybe I'll vamp a little bit while everyone's preparing their own thoughts. But I think the CoCo3 is not particularly rare. I think there's a lot of them out there. There's certainly several in my storage areas. I'm not hoarding them, but I have 3 or 4. I think I know other people who have 3 or 4. In fact, there for a while, it used to be anyone who was into the CoCo had 3 or 4 CoCo3s, often to the exclusion. I know people who have CoCo3s that don't have CoCo1s or 2s. In fact, I know of some people who are still kind of angry at me because when I made Farfall, I made it only for CoCo1s and 2s, and they can't run it on their CoCo3s. So anyway, there's a lot of CoCo3s in the community, and people want them, and people hold on to them. And a lot of people come into the community new, and nowadays a lot of people come into the community new, and they're not really CoCo people per se. They're kind of what I'd call tourists, where they're maybe they're Commodore 64 people, or maybe they're Atari 800 people, or whatever, and they're just kind of looking to expand their hobby into a different set of computers, something different to hunt for in the thrift shop or whatever. They check out CoCo Media and people talking about the CoCo3 and how great it was, best 8-bit computer ever, something like that. And they get their appetites whetted for it. And so they're desperate to get a CoCo3. And so when one does show up for sale, they bid the price up. And so I guess that would put me on the CoCo3 is not actually rare, it's just in high demand. That's probably the position I would take. So with that said, hopefully you guys have had time to have your thinking caps on. I want to turn it over to my co-host. So who wants to take it from here?
I think that there is a perception out there that the CoCo3 is rare. I don't know if that's really held up by the facts, but I will say that I believe that the CoCo3 is not as plentiful as the CoCo2 based on what I see on eBay auctions. And I think that perception is probably pushing up prices. I just saw today an auction for a CoCo3 in the box, granted, with I think a cassette recorder and a FD500 or 502 maybe, all in the box for $1,400.
Oh wow!
I believe that there's a perception that the CoCo3 is rare, and that is probably what's giving it this price hike, if you will.
Well, do you think it's rare, or do you think that people just believe it's rare?
Well, what's rare, right? Rare is there's less of it than the demand. I think that my guess, and again, I'm just speculating here, is that there are probably more CoCo3s out there than there are people that want them. But I would say in the past, 2-3 years, the number of people who we see wanting CoCo3s has increased. I think that's undoubtedly the case. And so, there's a commensurate uptick in the price based on the relative uptick in interest. I still don't think the CoCo3 is rare, but I do think that that there's pressure on the availability on the number of CoCo3s, and add to that the fact that more people are interested in them based on people coming on to Facebook CoCo groups or other groups who you've never heard before, right, who are expressing interest in getting them. And the price increase that you see on eBay tells me that there's some pressure on the existing number of available CoCo3 units, which we know is a limited amount, right, because we know they're not being made anymore, so whatever's out there is going to be out there. That's it.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that the CoCo3 is particularly rare, but I think part of what forces that is like you said, people are really gauging that by what's available on eBay, and there's not other readily available sources, especially if you're not part of the community, to go finding one. I mean, I saw just today or yesterday somebody offering to give somebody a CoCo3. So, for nothing. So it's not always that they're if you're just looking for something that's for sale, if you're in the community, you may find, sending an email to the CoCo list may yield you some leads that you wouldn't have. And a lot of us who have multiple CoCo3s aren't looking for them, so we may not even be aware of, a lot of the community may not even be aware of what's available or not available out on eBay. I can say that, I've sold some stuff recently on eBay. The lowest traffic items tend to be CoCo items. So I don't even think there's as many people on eBay looking for this stuff, right? I can put an Apple item out there and have 150 views in a day, and I might get 7 for a CoCo item.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and the color computer, like I say, the color computer 2 seems to be out there on eBay pretty consistently.
Oh yeah.
Occasionally CoCo 1s, and if you do see a CoCo 3, you're probably going to pay $200-$300 for one, and they just don't come up very often because people are holding on to them. They don't, they're not looking to get rid of them.
Yeah. So I mean, is that something special about the CoCo3 that those of us who have them don't want to sell them? Or is that an indicator that they're cool to have because we don't want to sell them? Or is there something else at play?
Or they just don't know alternate places to get them. I mean, Cloud9 sells CoCo3s that, his stock goes up and down, but you can go out to Cloud9.
They still sell them. Within the lifetime of this podcast, there were new in-box CoCo3s that you could sit by in the community. Those were still from Cloud9, but, that's not that long ago. So to think that they're rare, I mean, the boxed and, unused in a box is probably rare these days.
Yes,
but,
that's true. Yeah.
But, I don't know. I mean, like I said, rare depends on what your definition of rare is. Right. The supply is not meeting demand. So in that sense, it is rare. But we've seen times when gasoline did not, the supply of gasoline did not meet the demand, but gasoline wasn't rare at those points. Right. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's exactly the same situation, but there probably needs to be a different term, but there's some things certainly in the retro computing world that you might know about and you might want, and you might ever see one, or things that you might see one or two, but they're never available. They're never like those AgVision terminals. Those are rare. Right?
Genuinely rare, just because they made many fewer of those too.
Right. They made 200 of them or something. But anyway, so I don't think the CoCo3 is in that category. I'm sure there's probably too many of them at the bottom of a landfill somewhere.
True
but
enough.
I don't think there's a pile of them. It's so that they were sent there one at a time by people who didn't know what they had or didn't care. If you really want one and you got extra scratch, make me an offer. I'll probably sell you one. But actually, I don't know. I'm not sure you could offer me enough. But that's just me. So that's what they are. They're cool to own. So cool that people don't want to sell them. So
yeah,
maybe that's high demand, and maybe it's sort of rare, but not quite the same. There's plenty of them.
I would venture to say that in the CoCo community, if you want to talk about a status symbol, owning a CoCo3 is probably seen as a little bit of a higher guild than owning a CoCo2 or a CoCo1.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'm not sure it's merited, but it probably is true.
Yeah.
Neil, you got anything to add here?
Yeah, I was actually just going to say what Mike was saying is true. You could find CoCo3s, at least over here in my area, on like local marketplace groups like Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, stuff like that. I actually do see CoCo3s pop up for reasonable prices in Canadian dollars too, right? So that does help. Yes, I mean, other than eBay, they do show up. So I wouldn't say they're rare. because they are around.
Yeah, I think they're just rare on eBay these days.
Yeah. Like I just saw one pop up. I just saw one pop up yesterday. It's still listed. It's they do show up.
Okay, well, does that settle it? If you can't find a CoCo3, you're just not looking hard enough. And there's the answer, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, feedback at cococrew.org. Well, I think that'll probably do it for us this month. Why don't we take a break and we'll return with our other segments the rest of the show.
This month in CoCo history.
Welcome to This Month in CoCo History, where we explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. I'm Boise Pete, and this month we go back 40 years to 1982, when filing your income taxes could be done on a CoCo. Page 27 of the March 1982 issue of the Rainbow magazine features a small corner ad for 1981 income tax, a program that allows you to do your taxes on the CoCo, quote, the easy way, end quote. The ad touts that 1981 income tax directly follows Form 1040 and Schedules A and G. The program does virtually all the work of filing your taxes, is user-oriented, and even supplies lights and music to match your results. The software required a 16K CoCo, came on cassette for $9.95, and was sold by Warren Napier of Morris, Pennsylvania. When you think of the complexity of today's income tax software, it's amazing that for the year 1981, you could use a 16K CoCo to do your tax preparation and be entertained by the results. If you're like me, you need a little pick-me-up when you do your income taxes these days.
And that's this month in CoCo history.
Where's Jill?
She's really lonely. She's been spending hours on her Tandy 1000 again.
Do you think Dave will ever find his true love?
Not if he's been playing Quasar Commander on his CoCo all day.
We used to be lonely.
Until we met on tandysonly.com.
Tandysonly.com is the new online dating site for folks who won't give up their Tandy computers.
You don't have to be lonely at tandysonly.com.
Expand your horizons. Take your CoCo beyond the limits of floppy diskettes. Connect to Delphi, your complete online business and personal resource. Enjoy special forums for owners of the Tandy color computer, including OS9 Online and Rainbow Online. Meet other color computer owners, order hardware and software, inquire about products, and download programs. And Delphi is affordable. No extra charges for TimeNet or Telenet. No monthly minimum. No premium for 1200 or 2400 BPS. And connection rates are as low as $7.20 per hour. Find out what your CoCo was really meant for. Delphi, the world's premier online information service.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome to the tech segment for this month. Today we're going to talk a bit about MIDI. We'll give you a little MIDI primer for CoCo Cruisers. So let's talk about MIDI. Musical Instrument Digital Interface is the source of the acronym, MIDI. So what is MIDI? So MIDI, well, is a technical standard, but it's multifaceted. So from the Wikipedia page, it says MIDI is a technical standard that describes a communications protocol, digital interface, and electrical connectors that connect a wide variety of electronic musical instruments, computers, and related audio devices for playing, editing, and recording music. Let's just talk about, MIDI in general. You hear about it in a lot of older computers from the 80s or whatever, I guess because it was a new thing. And so a lot of people kind of cut their teeth dealing with MIDI at the same time they were dealing with computers. So there's some crossover. We've seen some MIDI designs for the color computer. The Rutherford Research MIDI card was a popular one. I think I actually have a late original of those. Then it's been reproduced 2 or 3 times. I think Jim Brain may have been the last one to reproduce it. I'm not sure if that was a Rutherford Research reproduction or if that was a new design based on some other MIDI cards he's done. Anyway, so what do you want to use MIDI for? Well, it's right there, the musical instruments. So it's quite common for people to want to do musical applications and use MIDI as a medium, either for recording or playing back music, or as for controlling either synthesizers or sometimes other computers, whatever. You often hear the term MIDI music. I'll just say there is no such thing as MIDI music. It's kind of a flat assertion, but there really isn't. MIDI is really just a protocol, or maybe a collection of protocols with different electronic circuits and also communications protocols and that sort of thing. Collectively, MIDI is just a protocol that allows devices to transfer data from one to another. MIDI is sort of the electronic equivalent of sheet music. Might be a little closer to, say, something like an old player piano roll. It's a little bit different from sheet music, requires a human to kind of interpret it and bring it to life. A piano roll just requires putting it in place and turning on a machine, and you get some sort of performance. So it's maybe a little bit closer to that, MIDI is. Before MIDI, manufacturers had their own proprietary standards to synchronize instruments. Some of these were something called CV/gate or CV gate, DIN sync, digital control bus or DCB. Also don't know much about that, but apparently that came from Roland, who was a manufacturer of synthesizers and other musical equipment. So using the Roland's DCB as a basis, someone named Dave Smith and an engineer from Sequential Circuits named Chet Wood devised what they called a universal interface to allow communications between equipment from different manufacturers. So good idea, get some standardization going. Standard was discussed and modified by representatives of Roland, Yamaha, Korg, Kawai, and Sequential Circuits. If you're into music at all, those names probably are starting to sound familiar. Moog, music founder Robert Moog. Obviously that's Moog as in a Moog synthesizer, which was one of the first popular synthesizers in popular music. Robert Moog announced MIDI in the October 1982 issue of Keyboard. In 1982, the first instruments were released with MIDI, the Roland Jupiter 6 and the Prophet 600. First computer to support MIDI, the NEC PC88 and PC98. That sounds like two computers. I think they're pretty closely related. So anyway, the NEC PC88, PC98 was released in 1982. The MIDI specification was published in August of 1983. So in 1983, the first MIDI drum machine, the Roland TR-909, and the first MIDI sequencer, the Roland MSQ-700, were released. What are some problems with MIDI? So MIDI basically is a serial port. It's a kind of a fast serial port for back in the day, kind of a slow serial port if you're going to run one today. Certainly slow compared to something like USB or Ethernet. MIDI serial transmission tends to lead to timing problems. For example, a 3-byte MIDI message requires nearly 1 millisecond to transmit. If you need to send an event on 2 channels at once, the event on the second channel cannot transmit until the first one is finished. So you need to transmit the one for the first channel and then transmit the one for the second channel, which means the second one can't get there for the first millisecond because you're busy transmitting the first one. So you're going to get a certain amount of clock skew for certain events, especially if things are plugged onto the same physical loop. If you do transmit on all 16 channels at the same time, then the last channel's transmission could be delayed roughly 16 milliseconds. 16 milliseconds, still pretty quick, but those will stack up. And if you start stacking those up, if you happen to get enough of that to get towards 100 milliseconds, you'll definitely notice, probably even before that, but many people will notice. Another complaint that some people have about MIDI, there's no such thing as MIDI music, right? MIDI is essentially a notation. When you go to play it back, it's going to play it back with whatever you've got plugged into your MIDI setup. You don't necessarily have 100% control of what actually comes out. There's an artistic complaint that once you've reduced a piece to MIDI, and you're playing it back, you get, since there's no human involved really other than kicking it off, you tend to get a more robotic performance. So you get pieces that don't have any human interpretation in the playback. So there's no inflection or syncopation or human touch attributes to the playback. So that's not really normally what I'd consider, well, certainly not a technical problem. It's more of a, well, why are you using MIDI instead of a human to playback kind of problem. All right, on to more technical stuff. Physical interface of MIDI. The MIDI 1.0 specification for an electrical interface is based on a fully isolated current loop. The cables are terminated with 180 degree 5-pin DIN connectors. And anybody who's ever tried to buy DIN connectors for the CoCo keyboard, or sorry, not keyboard, but joystick ports or cassette ports will know that not all 5-pin DIN connectors are the same. So 180 degrees, these are like the ones I guess on the cassette port for the CoCo, where they're all sort of along the bottom of of the round. So the standard applications use only 3 of the 5 conductors. When I state out these pin numbers, keep in mind that these are using kind of the generic DIN numbering scheme. So one is going to be kind of the farthest outside on well, if you hold the DIN connector where it's facing you and the notch in the connector, the male connector, is on the top, then the farthest to the left pin will be pin 1. Then pin 2 skips 1 and goes to the one that's directly opposite the dimple. So it'll be completely at the bottom. And then pin 3 will be the one on the far end. And then those 2 pins that are kind of left over, 4 will be the one that's in between 1 and 2, and then 5 will be the one that's in between 2 and 3. So a ground wire will go to pin 2, leave a quote, balanced pair of conductors on pins 4 and 5 to carry a 5-volt data signal. Interesting to note, the connector configuration can only carry messages in one direction, so if you need two-way communications, you need 2 cables. MIDI out port normally sources a 5-volt source through a 220 ohm resistor out through pin 4 of the MIDI out DIN connector, in on pin 4 of the receiving device's MIDI in DIN connector through a 220 ohm protection resistor, and the LED of an opto isolator. Current then returns via pin 5 on the MIDI to in port to the originated device's MIDI out port pin 5, again with a 220 ohm resistor in the path, giving a nominal current of about 5 milliamperes. Despite the cable's appearance, there is no conductive path between the 2 MIDI devices, only an optically isolated one. Properly designed MIDI devices are relatively immune to ground loops and similar interference. That's why they're using the opto isolator. The baud rate on the system is 31,250 symbols per second, with a logic 0 being represented by current being on. For what it's worth, in terms of what order the bits are sent in, you can use a standard UART, like a 6850 or something, so basically the same in terms of how a serial port operates. It's kind of going a little faster and through this optically isolated current loop. So in addition to the expected in and out connections, most MIDI devices also have a through port. Hopefully that's enough information on the physical interfaces. Again, this is just the standard old MIDI 1.0 with the 5-pin DINs. Moving on to the communication protocol. Mostly this is built up upon usually 3-byte messages. For example, if you have like a key push, which represents pressing a key on the keyboard, you'll send an event message which has information corresponding to the pitch of the key and basically telling the sound module to start playing the note. And then when you release the key, it'll send a key release message, and that says to stop playing the note. You can see where translating these electronic events to physical real-world stuff has a certain amount of leeway. So I'm sure MIDI implementations can differ quite a bit on how exactly these are implemented, how well they're implemented, that sort of thing. Point being is essentially you you have a message that's sent for each variable change, each type of change. So you have note on and note off. Those specify the note that's being turned on or turned off. You have velocity. Velocity is there to determine how hard you hit the key. Yeah, aftertouch. This is another one that's going to require some interpretation, but how hard the key is held down. Pitch bend. That's going to correspond roughly to like the slide on a trombone. Pan. That's a reference to stereo left versus right. Modulation, that could be different things. It probably is going to be modify some aspect of the sound. Volume. Hopefully you have some idea what volume means. Then there'll be messages for basically anything else that's MIDI controllable. The protocol supports 128 different notes. Apparently this goes from C, that's 5 octaves below middle C, up through to G, which 10 octaves. It says G 10 octaves higher. I took that from Wikipedia, but I think it means G 10 octaves higher than the 5 octaves below middle C. So basically you're talking about 4 or 5 octaves above middle C at that point, I guess. So a G9, something like that. Whatever that works out to 128 notes, 12 and a half octave range, give or take. 16 channels. So you can have 16 different devices that are controllable for each chain of signals, and basically each wire or daisy chain of wires. You can support up to 128 programs. Programs correspond to basically instrument profiles. If you have the right information, you can tell it to switch from a violin to a piano to a guitar, that sort of thing. MIDI signals also include built-in clock pulses that can help define the tempo of the track and allow basic timing synchronization. The last part is file formats. The MIDI files exist for recording, MIDI songs. They can be used for ringtones, other ways that you want to transmit audio information, particularly in ways that are space efficient. So a MIDI file is not an audio recording. It's a set of instructions, like I said, pitch or tempo. It can be way smaller than the equivalent recorded audio, even than, say, something like an MP3, which is already compressed, and certainly is smaller than a WAV file. The standard MIDI file, or SMF, is a file format that provides a standardized way for music sequences to be saved, transported, and opened on other systems. SMFs are created as an export format for software sequencers and hardware workstations. They organize MIDI messages into one or more parallel tracks and timestamp the events so they can be played back in sequence. Header contains the arrangement's track count, tempo, and an indicator of which of the 3 SMF formats the file uses. A Type 0 file contains the entire performance merged onto a single track. Type 1 files may contain any number of tracks, and they are performed synchronously. Type 2 files are rarely used, according to Wikipedia, and store multiple arrangements, with each arrangement having its own track and intended to be played in sequence. Modernization. So like I said, the MIDI standard dates back to 1982. That's literally 40 years now. So there's been a few changes along the way. In addition to the original 31.25 kilobit current loop, there have been other connectors used for the electrical transmission of data. USB, of course. IEEE 1394, which is also known as FireWire. Apparently Ethernet is now common as well. So there's various kind of adaptations to take the basic MIDI data and find different ways to transmit it. It's cool that they've done it. Might be cool to work in the engineering department of some of these music companies if you want to do that kind of stuff. So the MIDI 2.0 standard was presented on the 17th of January 2020. MIDI 2.0 includes MIDI capability inquiry specification for property exchange and profiles, and a new universal MIDI packet format. MIDI can control any electronic or digital device that can read and process a MIDI command. So MIDI has been adopted as a control protocol in a number of non-musical applications. Associated with that, you have a certain amount of device control. some of which will be accompanied by music. So it makes you can see where it transitioned over from using this protocol to control music to then using it to control light shows or to control, say, animatronics that are synchronized with the music. I was kind of thinking now, I wonder how much MIDI use they got at Chuck E. Cheese or at Showbiz Pizza. The other thing MIDI has been used for, and like I said, it's kind of for back in 82, it's kind of a fast serial port. 10 years later, not so fast. Now 40 years later, not particularly fast at all, but still kind of fast in the retro realm. So there have been a few games that have come along that have used MIDI as a networking medium, and probably more than the ones I'm going to list, but for some reason it seems like the Atari world was embraced it a little bit more, probably because the Atari ST actually had MIDI ports built in, so they were more familiar with the technology. But there's a, quote, 1987 first-person shooter game called MIDI Maze. That's available on both the Atari 8-bit platform and the Atari ST, and in fact I think you can hook them up and they can play each other using both types of clients. There's also a 1990 Atari ST puzzle game called Oxyd, O-X-Y-D. So I don't think it's doing anything all that special other than the fact that it's communicating game state data across this network. So get out your MIDI cards and write your network game, and it seems like a good way to do it. All right, well, that's probably long enough. Thanks for listening. I hope you learned something. Let me know what you think. Obviously, you can send to feedback, FEEDBACK, at CoCoCrew.org. And if you just want to complain to me, I'm, of course, John at CoCoCrew.org, JOHN. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. Coco forever. See you at CoCoFest.
Coco Tuner makes tuning musical instruments a breeze. Precise enough for concert piano tuning. Easy to use for music students and teachers. The Coco Tuner plugs into the cartridge slot of your color computer. Connect a microphone to the cartridge and you're ready to tune. A pitch comparison is displayed on your Coco screen. Bands indicate whether you are below or above the correct frequency. Accurate within 0.003 Hz of middle C, Coco Tuner can be used to tune any musical instrument. Coco Tuner, just $89 from Real Time Specialties Incorporated, Ypsilanti, Michigan.
You ready, boys? Let's go. When I was just a youngin' back in 1983, my daddy took me by the hand and he said these words to me. Computers are the future, son, and I want you to be like me and be a Tandy man. Tandy man. Tandy man. Tandy man. Up and down the mountain, you can hear them typing keys. Once I got my own disk drive, I could store just what I pleased. I was using my assembler when it first occurred to me. I was a Tandy man, Tandy man, Tandy man, Tandy man. Grown, I took a wife and we're happy as we could be. When my boy was born, he cut his teeth on his very own CoCo3. And just like my daddy done, he was born to be like me and be a Tandy man, Tandy man, Tandy man, Tandy man. Tandy man, Tandy man, Tandy man, Tandy man, Tandy man, Tandy man.
Welcome back to Neil's Corner on episode 82 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. Yet again, I've got another brand new hot-off-the-sheets game to review for your CoCo3. Is it just me, or does it seem like there's more games being released now versus back in the day? Okay, well that might be a bit off, but it's definitely great to see all the CoCo software development these days. The game in question this month is called 0 Hour, and it is brought to us by Nick Morentis from Australia. Nick is a prolific CoCo games programmer. He made tons of games back in the day, and quite a few to this current day. After long anticipation of Nick dropping a ton of blog updates and teasing us over the past year, this game is finally done and ready for us to enjoy. I can definitely say it was worth the wait. Best way to describe this game, in my opinion, is that it's like Rupert Rhythm on steroids. Nick had created Rupert Rhythm, the music box keeper, back in 1988. I remember buying a copy of it back then and was instantly hooked. My sister and I put countless hours of gameplay into it. On a side note, Nick has released Rupert Rhythm as a free download now on his webpage. Alright, on to 0 Hour. It's a platform game with puzzle elements thrown into it. Here's the exact wording on the back of the game case to get you all hyped up. An unknown apocalyptic extremist group has planted a nuclear bomb on the top floor of an inner city building. Everyone has been evacuated from the area, and it is up to you to infiltrate the automated facility, disable the security system, and make your way to the top floor to shut down the bomb before the time runs out. Save the city from nuclear Armageddon. Your mission is to infiltrate the site at Ground Zero. Avoid the surveillance robots and disable the security sensors on each of the 12 levels to gain access to level 13, where you must disarm the nuclear bomb before the countdown timer expires. Alright, now a few really cool key points to mention here. You start out on the foyer screen where you can enter each of the 12 levels. You cannot, however, enter the final level 13 at the very top of the screen until you complete all of the 12 levels first. You'll notice the door for level 13 is locked. Nick has allowed us to play the game in any order you wish. Unlike other games, you must play through levels sequentially. You do not have to in 0 Hour. This especially helps if you're having difficulty in one level and you can come back to it later and try again. One of the biggest things that makes this game unique is each level is different, and a lot of the levels have mini-games in them. Nick mentioned in one of his blogs this created a lot more development time, but in the end, I think it's worth it for the replay value. Nick also wanted to add some background animation. In each of the levels, you will see different cogwheels animating in the background. For audio, the game uses 2-channel interrupt-driven sound. One channel for the background effects, and the other channel for digital sound effects and voices. The digital speech really sounds awesome, and the graphics are glorious at full 16-color, 256 by 225 resolution with animation. This game has no scoring. It's more about disabling the security system on each level and making your way to the top floor, which is level 13. You do have a timer, but Nick is very generous and it starts off at 9,999, so you have plenty of time to complete each level. He also gives you 9 lives to start out with, and you can obtain free lives in the game as you go through. In order to play 0 Hour, you must have a Color Computer 3 with 512K of memory. 6309 processor is optional for a 10% speed increase. Joystick required and 2-button support is also optional. You can also use an emulator on a modern PC if you wish to go that route. If you are interested in buying this game, Nick sells it directly on his webpage. $10 for the digital download, which gives you a disk image with a PDF manual, or $20 for a physical copy on CD mailed to you, along with the digital download, so you don't have to wait to start playing 0 Hour. I can truly say it's worth the price. This game has an absolute ton of replay value. It is what I call a commercial-grade release, something that you would have paid $60+ for back in the day. Technically, it's even better, because I don't remember games looking this nice on the CoCo3 back then. It's a small price to pay to support Nick, and in hopes he continues to bring us top-notch CoCo games. Well, there you have it. Another brand new game to play on your CoCo3. What are you waiting for? Link is in the show notes to purchase your copy today. Until next month, happy CoCo gaming and retro forever.
Dino Wars. 65 million years ago, giant carnivorous beasts roamed the earth, fighting for territorial dominance. The only rule? Survive. Each player controls a rampaging dinosaur. If you aren't quick, you'll find yourself ruthlessly attacked by your opponent. Develop your maneuvering skills. Then declare an all-out Dino War on your opponent. Dino Wars requires a TRS-80 color computer with 2 joysticks, 16K of memory recommended. From Radio Shack.
Wow, I guess it's that time again. We have reached the end of episode 82 on the CoCo Crew Podcast. As usual, I'd like to thank our host, John Linville, for procuring all the news articles each month and providing us with fantastic tech segments, such as the MIDI one this month. Mike Rowan for painstakingly editing the podcast and creating those fun commercials. Boise Pete, our CoCo historian. He remembers it, so you don't have to. Last but not least, a huge thanks to all of you who support and listen to us each month. We really do appreciate it, and we also appreciate your feedback. Until next month, retro and CoCo forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo. 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 CoCo.
Dance like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway? It's a blast from the past.
Dance, dance, dance.